The U.S. and Canada, two nations, separated by a border but united by a shared history, a love of hockey, go Maple Leafs, and a deep-rooted connection that goes beyond just sports. Economically, the two countries are intertwined in a complex web of trade. For decades, these North American neighbors have enjoyed a largely peaceful and prosperous relationship. The trade between them includes everything from agricultural products to advanced technology, making each other indispensable partners. This partnership has been particularly important for Alaska, the U.S. state geographically separated from the rest of the country by Canada. Alaska's unique position makes it heavily reliant on Canadian infrastructure for the transport of essential goods, from food supplies to industrial equipment. Canadian roads and ports serve as vital arteries for Alaska, ensuring that the state remains connected to the broader U.S. economy. The seamless movement of goods across the border has been a cornerstone of this relationship. This reliance has historically been a non-issue, a testament to the strong ties between the two countries. Diplomatic efforts and mutual respect have ensured that the border remains a bridge rather than a barrier. However, recent political developments have put a strain on this vital artery of commerce, causing delays and uncertainties. Trade policies and border regulations have become points of contention, affecting the flow of goods and services. Leaving many to wonder, have things gotten lost in the woods somewhere? The future of U.S. Canada trade relations hangs in the balance, and only time will tell if these two nations can navigate through the complexities and find their way back to a harmonious partnership. March 6, 2025 marked a turning point in U.S. Canada relations. On this day, the Canadian province of British Columbia implemented a new system of tolls on all commercial vehicles traveling to Alaska. This move, which effectively shut off key access routes to Alaska through Canada, was not a decision taken lightly. It came as a direct response to escalating tensions with the U.S., particularly regarding trade tariffs imposed by the former Trump administration. These tariffs, targeting Canadian goods, had already begun to impact the Canadian economy. The tolls, then, were a calculated response, a way for Canada to protect its own interests in the face of what it perceived as unfair trade practices. The new toll system was designed to be comprehensive, affecting all commercial vehicles, regardless of their size or cargo. This meant that everything from small delivery vans to massive 18-wheelers had to pay the tolls. The toll rates were set based on the weight and type of cargo, with heavier and more hazardous materials incurring higher fees. This created a significant financial burden for many trucking companies, especially those that relied heavily on the route through British Columbia to reach Alaska. The immediate impact was felt by the trucking industry, which saw a sharp increase in operational costs. Many companies had to reroute their trucks through alternative paths, some of which were longer and more treacherous. This not only increased fuel consumption but also extended delivery times, affecting supply chains and businesses dependent on timely deliveries. The tolls also led to a rise in the cost of goods transported through these routes, which was eventually passed on to consumers. The political ramifications were immediate. The U.S. government condemned the tolls, calling them an unfair trade barrier. Protests erupted on both sides of the border, with truckers and business owners demanding a resolution. The White House issued statements urging Canada to reconsider its decision, while Canadian officials stood firm, arguing that the tolls were a necessary measure to counteract the economic damage caused by U.S. tariffs. The economic impact extended beyond the trucking industry. Canadian manufacturers and exporters, already struggling with the tariffs, now faced additional challenges. The increased cost of transporting goods through British Columbia made it harder for them to compete in the U.S. market. Some companies began exploring alternative routes and methods of transportation such as shipping goods by sea or rail, but these options were often more expensive and less efficient. In Ottawa, the Canadian government held numerous press conferences to explain and justify the tolls. Politicians emphasized that the decision was not made lightly and was a direct response to the economic pressures imposed by the U.S. tariffs. They argued that the tolls were a necessary step to protect Canadian jobs and industries. The situation remained tense, with both sides looking for a diplomatic solution to ease the economic strain and restore normal trade relations. The reaction from former U.S. President Donald Trump was swift and furious. True to form, he took to his favorite platform, Twitter, to denounce the tolls as unfair, a disgrace, and a very bad deal for America. This wasn't the first time Trump had trained his sights on Canada. His presidency was marked by a series of trade disputes and aggressive rhetoric towards America's northern neighbor. From threatening to scrap NAFTA to imposing tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium, Trump's approach to U.S. Canada relations was, to put it mildly, unconventional. The tolls on Alaska-bound traffic were simply the latest flashpoint in an increasingly strained relationship. The immediate impact of the tolls was felt most acutely in Alaska. Businesses and residents alike faced the brunt of increased costs for essential goods. Everything from groceries to construction materials, typically transported through Canada, became significantly more expensive. This sudden price hike put a strain on Alaskan businesses, forcing many to raise prices or cut back on operations. For everyday Alaskans, it meant feeling the pinch at the checkout counter, as the cost of living in an already expensive state continued to climb. Section 5: Borderland Blues communities caught in the crossfire. The situation wasn't just an economic headache, it was a social and political one too. Border communities accustomed to the easy flow of goods and people between the two countries found themselves on the front lines of this diplomatic spat. Towns that relied on cross-border tourism saw a sharp decline in visitors. Family and social connections, often spanning the border, were tested as travel became more complicated and expensive. The tolls, while aimed at resolving a trade dispute, had inadvertently driven a wedge between communities and individuals. Section 6: The Great Canadian Staycation, Tourists Opting Out of America. The impact on tourism wasn't limited to border towns. The political climate under the Trump administration, coupled with the escalating trade tensions, led to a significant drop in Canadian tourism to the U.S. overall. Canadians, once frequent visitors to U.S. destinations, started opting for staycations, choosing to explore their own backyard rather than venturing south. This trend was particularly noticeable in Alaska, where businesses that relied heavily on Canadian tourism dollars felt the pinch. Section 7: Skiing Through Sanctions, the Buckwheat Classic's Symbolic stand. Amidst the diplomatic frostiness, however, there were glimmers of hope and resilience. The annual Buckwheat International Ski Classic, a beloved event held partly in BC and partly in Skagway, Alaska, went ahead as planned. Canadian participation remained strong, with many attendees viewing their presence as a gesture of cross-border friendship and a defiant stand against the political headwinds. The event served as a powerful reminder that even in the face of political disagreements, the bonds between people can endure. Section 8: Diplomatic Deadlock, Tensions Simmer as Negotiations Stall. Despite these fleeting moments of unity, the broader diplomatic picture remained bleak. The tolls on Alaska-bound traffic became a symbol of the deteriorating relationship between the U.S. and Canada. Negotiations to resolve the impasse stalled, with neither side willing to back down. The situation underscored the fragility of international relations, especially in an era of rising nationalism and protectionism. Section 9: The Road Ahead, Navigating the Future of U.S.-Canada Relations. As of 2025, the tolls remain in place, a constant reminder of the unresolved trade dispute. These tolls, initially introduced as a temporary measure, have now become a symbol of the ongoing tension between the two nations. The economic impact on local businesses and commuters has been significant, with many expressing frustration over the lack of progress in resolving the issue. The long-term consequences of this diplomatic standoff are yet to be fully understood. Experts warn that prolonged uncertainty could lead to a decline in cross-border trade and tourism, further straining the economies of both countries. Additionally, the social fabric of border communities, which have historically enjoyed close ties, is at risk of being torn apart. However, one thing is clear: the road ahead for U.S.-Canada relations is uncertain. The once seamless border, which facilitated the easy movement of people and goods, now stands as a barrier, both physically and metaphorically. Citizens on both sides are left wondering what the future holds and whether a resolution is on the horizon. Repairing the damage done and rebuilding trust will require a concerted effort from both sides. Diplomatic channels must be reopened, and meaningful dialogue must take place. Both nations need to prioritize mutual understanding and cooperation, setting aside past grievances to forge a new path forward. Community leaders and business owners are already taking steps to foster goodwill, but their efforts need to be supported by strong political will. Whether the political will exists to mend fences remains to be seen. Political analysts are divided on the issue, with some optimistic about a breakthrough, while others remain skeptical. The upcoming elections in both countries could play a pivotal role in shaping the future of bilateral relations. The leaders elected will have the responsibility to either bridge the gap or widen it further. In the meantime, communities and businesses on both sides of the border are left to navigate the fallout, hoping for a swift and amicable resolution. Local economies are adapting to the new reality, finding innovative ways to sustain themselves despite the challenges. Grassroots movements are emerging, advocating for peace and collaboration. The resilience of these communities is a testament to the enduring spirit of cooperation that has long defined U.S. Canada relations. As the world watches, the hope remains that a brighter, more united future is within reach.